Welcome, Life Sciences, back from your wee break. I think that's the last time I'm allowed to say it. I'm going to miss it. All right, so we're looking at the revision of the excretory system. We're briefly going over a few concepts that are really important. We are skimming through it, but as I said, this is a revision series. If you got a little bit lost, maybe go through the other lessons, etc., that you can maybe catch up on. Right, just if you're very unsure of what happens. So what we've done so far, we've looked at the whole urinary system, all the different organs that make up. We've looked at this whole concept of how do we make urine, right? What happens, our blood, how we filter it. We take all the things that are in blood, and filtering means we take out what we still need to keep in our body, and anything that we don't need, we now are going to excrete, get rid of, in this form of urine. Then we also went through the concept of homeostasis, how important it is that the kidneys have certain balancing functions, right? It's very important, and the kidneys are responsible of controlling the pH of our blood, right? And very important, this whole concept of osmoregulation, osmosis, water, how water moves. And there it's really important where the kidneys are able to balance the water, right? The water levels and our salt levels in the body. We don't want either of those to become too high or too low, so we need to put mechanisms in place. Now, the last section that we look at is what happens when our kidneys no longer work. Kidney failure, right? So sometimes with diseases, etc., our kidneys, even just getting old, our kidneys no longer work, and we need to see what could be the possible options there. Again, if we're looking at the terminology, remember here, not so much, right, but a few terms that obviously you need to become familiar with. So guys, the most important concept that we're looking at over here is that when the kidneys fail, this is the problem. We're not getting rid of our waste products. So what happens is all these things we spoke about, all right, these nitrogenous wastes, right, so the nitrogen, those nitrogenous wastes, sometimes maybe we had drugs in our system. When I say drugs, I also mean headache tablets and those things, right? We could have had colorants or preservatives, any of those things. I'm not going to write them down, but the most important thing is we need to get rid of these nitrogenous wastes. So if the kidneys don't do that, that could be a problem. The second thing that happens is, right, that the kidneys are not going to control the water and salt balance. And this is going to have a huge impact, right, on our blood pressure. That's going to be quite important. As I said to you before, this could have a huge big thing on our blood pressure. Let me put the R in, there we go. My spelling is terrible. And what this ultimately does, have a look, is it's going to put a strain on our heart. And our heart, obviously, if the strain is on the heart could stop working, could go into cardiac arrest. So it's not only the kidneys, but the heart that also can fail. So what do we need to do? Okay, there are a few options, but other than that, what could cause the kidneys to fail? Now remember, these things, right, are sometimes, they're not run-of-the-mill things, as I said, and it doesn't mean that because you get a bacterial infection that your kidneys are going to fail. This means sometimes that you're going to get a bacteria, the infection that could be so bad that it damages the kidneys. That's what we're talking about over here. All of these things are like on the other scale, right, of what could possibly happen. Right, over here, overuse of painkillers. You know, some people are unfortunately addicted to the painkillers, and those painkillers have an effect on the kidney, because that whole filtering thing that it does, it could strain on the kidneys, and the kidneys obviously could get damaged, and if the kidney's damaged, they're going to go into failure. Aging, unfortunately, it happens. People get older. The older you get, the less the things work. It's how it is, all right? And it's terrible to say, but with aging, things don't always work as well. And what could happen is the kidneys could fail, right? Because they just can't regenerate. This little ugly dude at the bottom that I've got a picture, This is a parasite that is sometimes found in water, non-running water, right? So always, if you want to swim somewhere, make sure it's flowing water. And this little parasite, it's got a scientific name, but we call it bilharzia. And what it can do, unfortunately, it can burrow through the walls of our blood vessels and into our kidneys, and once again, it can damage the kidneys. So what are our options, right? When it comes to the failing of kidneys, you need to understand, you're looking at here, what are your options? Now, the two options I'm going to speak about are going to be the first one, right, is you need to understand the concept of dialysis. And the whole concept of dialysis is that you go to a medical facility. Some people who are wealthy can afford to hire a machine, right, but lots of people can't. And you basically have to go somewhere, they hook you up to a machine, and they literally take your blood out and they filter it. So a machine, if you're looking at over here, right, this whole concept takes over, right? There's the picture of the machine at the top over here. It takes over the function of your kidneys. So what you have to have, the same thing as your kidneys work with this osmosis, moving from a high concentration to a low concentration. That's exactly what's going to happen with dialysis here as well. You're going to have to go up to a machine, right, and what's going to happen is it's going to filter your blood for you. This is generally a temporary measure, right? You cannot go on it constantly. Your body at some time might reject it. You've got to have certain drugs that need to go into your system. Also, you need to think at the positive versus the negative. Ultimately, the machine might not be able to take over from your kidneys altogether. The second option that is available to you, right, is this whole concept of a kidney transplant. So what happens, somebody, a donor, all right, somebody who has died or a living donor, they might, because you've got two kidneys, they might donate one. That is where they give you their kidney, right, a living kidney. And what they then do is they transplant it. They put this healthy kidney into your body. What's quite interesting most of the time is people don't realize is very often the ones that don't work, they stay in your body. What they do over here, they put the working one and they attach it to all the different blood vessels, and you have the one working kidney. Right, so what kind of questions can we ask here? A dialysis question is a nice question. You'll see here I've put a dialysis question in here for you, and just a whole understanding what the whole concept is. Now the question says an extract on renal failure, all right, and its treatment is given below. So here we've got, right, the little bit below over here, and this is where the diagram represents a dialysis machine. So this whole diagram over here, right, is the whole dialysis machine. I don't want to write too much here because we're going to go into the next thing. Okay, at the bottom over here, so I've put the diagram in, but there is a little bit of a blurb. It's a little bit of a reading piece about, right, the dialysis. And it said here, kidneys can become so damaged that they no longer function properly, and we say that the person has renal failure. Right, so that's given us a definition of what renal failure is. People with severe renal failure can be treated by dialysis. So it's telling you what this is, using a dialysis machine, and it tells you that the machine purifies the blood. Dialysis is the separation of molecules by size, the smaller molecules diffusing through the tubing, selectively permeable membrane in the place of your nephron, and this process takes between 3 and 6 hours and needs to be done 2 or 3 times a week. Right, so we have a diagram and we have, all right, a little bit of an introduction of why somebody would want it. Okay, the first question, describe what renal failure is. And as I said to you, very often, if I read the little piece, sometimes we don't read what is given to us. Any kind of picture, any kind of reading piece over here has information that is going to help you. And if we look at the very first line, right, if we skim, there's renal failure, and there's renal failure. And if we go back to the key words, what does the first line say to us? Kidneys can become so damaged that they no longer function properly. I'm not going to rewrite all of that, but that's what you're going to do. You're going to take this sentence out and you're going to write it in your answer, right? Because that is going to be the answer. It's right, it's there. It's in your thing. So 1 mark for telling me that they're damaged and no longer they function properly. It's not necessary for you to write it in your own words or anything. The text is there for you to be able to use. Okay, the next question asks you, which process is illustrated in the diagram below? Now, if I jump 2 slides back, all right, and I go over here, it said to me there that the diagram below represents a dialysis machine, all right, and we know that a dialysis machine is needed for somebody who, all right, is going to need dialysis. So what is the process called? The process is called dialysis. All right, and here it's going to say at what point in the diagram, A or B, you need to find it. Here's A, here's B. Right, would you expect the highest concentration of urea? Now, urea is waste. Right, so where would be the highest concentration? Guys, here we go, all right, from the patient's blood vessels, number B. Okay, I'm afraid it looks like our time has run out, right? There's lots of practice papers that you need to be able to look at. The government websites have got lovely old past papers. Practice those, see the kind of questions they can ask you. It's really important that you are able to do that. That's all for us today. Have a good time. Bye-bye.